All right, I'm going to get us started. My name's Corinne Waldow. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Boulder Chamber. And I want to thank you for joining us for our weekly outdoor and indoor recreation call. I want to thank you for asking your questions, getting the information you need, and providing feedback when we request it. It's all about opening in a safe manner so that we can continue in a positive direction and not go backwards. At this time, I'm going to hand it off to Jesse Rounds with Boulder County Public Health.
Thanks, Corinne. I'll jump right in. So first off, I just want to go over what we'll talk about today. Just basically the same updates we've given each week with a little bit more detail, focus on face mask orders, information like that. Then I'll give you an update on where we are with our cases and how that's impacting our plans or the community's plans to move to protect our neighbors. And then we can jump into the sector updates and hopefully have plenty of time for Q&A. So the big news in terms of the timeline is that yesterday, officially, the state began accepting Protect Our Neighbors applications, applications from communities to enter into the Protect Our Neighbors framework. And I will go into more detail about that in a little bit. In terms of where we are and where we're going, the public health orders are around for the long haul. And that really has to do with the fact that we don't have a vaccine, we don't have an effective treatment regime, and we don't have herd immunity. And because COVID-19 is just as contagious as it was in February, we need to protect our population, especially our the vulnerable members of our population. So it's going to be some time, months and months, before we are really in a situation where we don't need these public health orders to manage the reopening process. To that end, the face covering ordinance for the county has been extended indefinitely. And the reason I have all this wall of text here is this came out of our the press release that the county public health department put out. And I think it's really important to look at those points because they really drive home the fact that face coverings are about protecting each other. And it's about wearing a face mask, wearing a face covering so that you can both protect your neighbors and also so that you can reinforce the importance of wearing face masks to others who may not be interested or may not know that face masks have a positive impact on the community. Like I said, face coverings have the ordinance has been extended indefinitely by the county. I do want to point out, I think it's really important, especially for businesses, to understand that if you are located in a municipality, it may be that your municipality has stricter face covering ordinances in place. And I can show you a graphic later that really illustrates that, but I think it's really important for you as the business owner to be aware that if you're in a municipality, check with your municipality to see if their face covering order, what their face covering order says. The last little bit here is on the face covering script. We've talked about this pretty much every week. And a couple of weeks ago, our internal staff came up with this sort of flow chart of a conversation you could have with a member of the community who does not want to wear a face mask, but still wants to utilize your business. Are there alternatives for accessing the services you provide? And I think this is another way of thinking about how we use spaces and businesses in Boulder County. This is risks and benefits of various activities. And just to think about this activity you're about to go do, how risky is it? What can I do to reduce that risk? Does wearing a face covering, does keeping 6 feet of distance, does that help reduce that risk? I think it's really important that you recognize that as soon as you leave your house, as soon as you're exposing yourself to the larger community, you're taking risks. Just another slide that we've had in a ton of presentations. This is resources and information that you can get online. The first one is our Boulder County website. We link to a lot of state resources as well as national resources, and some information that we've put together internally. COVID19.colorado.gov is where they put all of their public health orders and all of their interpretations of their own public health orders. And we've started linking directly to those. They've gotten a lot better about updating their information more quickly, and I think it's a really great place to get information at this point. These other sources of information are really great for industry-specific questions or locality-specific questions. And we really encourage you to reach out to your Chamber of Commerce, to industry associations, licensing agencies if you are a business or a facility that has licensing at the state level. And just a little about where we are and where we're going in terms of the public health order. We are in the 8th revision of the Safer at Home public health order. The revisions really affected libraries, real estate agents, and bars. There are other small revisions that have affected various industries as well. Safer at Home is going to remain in effect as long as Protect Our Neighbors, which is the next phase, is in effect. And I'll go into that in a little bit, why that is. And I just want to close the slide by saying that we don't expect any more revisions of Safer at Home because most communities are going to be trying to move to Protect Our Neighbors, but there may be additional tweaks that are made in order to improve the message that comes through from Safer at Home. In terms of outbreak updates and sort of the epidemiological situation in the county, this slide goes to just the end of last week. But I think it shows that we did have a surge in cases in the middle of June, and that has impacted our ability to move to Protect Our Neighbors, which is the next public health order phase for the state. And the reason I say that is, in order to enter Protect Our Neighbors, you must apply as a community. So in our case, that would be the entire county applies, and you have to meet a certain set of guidelines. Basically, you have to have, a reduction in number of the rate of new cases, a reduction in hospitalization rate and mortality rate, as well as demonstrated ability to ramp up in the case where a surge of cases occurs, even so far as to have a plan about how you would address that, both at the epidemiological level in terms of hospital room and all of that, but also how we would as a community address that in terms of businesses closing or reducing access. As I pointed out in the last slide, we had that peak of cases back in the middle of June, and that means that we do not yet qualify for Protect Our Neighbors. Our epidemiological team is constantly tabulating the figures to see if and when we will qualify for Protect Our Neighbors. At that point, we will apply, and it will probably take about 2 weeks for us to be accepted into the program. And we don't know when that'll be. We have to get below the threshold required by the state, then we have to apply, then 2 weeks pass, and then we might get it. So best bet at this stage, if nothing else changes and we continue to see positive trends, it would be the end of July, beginning of August before we see the county moving to Protect Our Neighbors. And with that, I believe I'll hand it over to Marnie.
Thanks, Jesse. So one of the things Jesse mentioned was that we are in the 8th amended public health order. That happened at the end of last week. So it was after our last webinar. So we were in the 7th amended public health order. To be honest, nothing actually changed for us in the recreation sector. So I'm going to go over where we are in in personal recreation. But much of this information, if you've been on a call, you have seen it before. And one of the things that you'll see throughout these slides has to do with the importance of wherever you, your employees, your patrons are, always have to follow social distancing requirements. And that is to remain 6 feet from other individuals, wash hands frequently for 20 seconds or more, and wear face coverings when you aren't able to maintain that 6-foot distance. So I reiterate that throughout the slides. So starting here, indoor facilities for recreation, pretty much everything is open. Gyms, rec centers, and pools are open, but there are capacity limits. So indoors, you can achieve a 25% capacity of the regular capacity of your facility, or up to 50 people. But you have to use the number that is fewer, and that would be per room. So in a rec facility, you might have many rooms. That's 4 walls and a door. You have to know what the capacity limit is of that room, and you make your calculations. Some facilities are really large, and the 50-person maximum will be what you would use. Important for recreating is that in your gyms and your weight rooms, sharing of equipment anywhere, sharing of equipment is discouraged. But of course, in weight rooms, it's hard to not to share equipment. So in the instance that you do have to have shared equipment, that equipment needs to be clean and disinfected between users. Every time somebody uses it, it needs to be disinfected. Restrooms and showers are open, as your lockers can be open as well. But really getting back to that social distancing and those requirements, do what you can to put social cues in place, put physical cues in place. And sometimes that means that you would close off some lockers. Think about how people would navigate through your spaces, especially indoors, so that they can remain safe in your facilities. Jesse, I'll go to the next slide. So the next slide moves us to the outdoors. And outdoors for recreation, any activity is allowed as long as you have 10 or fewer people. There are some particular activities where those thresholds have increased, where you can have more than 10 people. Those are specific, so I'm going to go through those. If you're not doing one of these activities, the amount of people is 10 or fewer. First off, Boulder County is authorizing fitness classes up to 50 people outdoors, because that is what the requirement or the threshold is indoors when you have enough space. And considering that outdoors we think you'd have enough space, hopefully in your park, you can go up to that limit for your fitness classes. Swimming pools outdoors can go up to 50% capacity, but still have the cap of 50 people total. For your swimming pools, they need to be clean and disinfected every hour, and those frequently touched surfaces, that includes frequently touched surfaces, shared objects, and your bathroom. So they're very specific to that. Your playgrounds, outdoor sports facilities have a cap of no more than 25 people. And that would be in the places where you might have baseball fields or your basketball courts. It would be calculated per court or per field for sports facilities. And you just need to clean those high touch surfaces frequently. Next slide. Personal recreation, again, on the outdoors moving forward. The other part that is under our guidance under personal recreation is the organized youth and adult recreational sport leagues. For these activities, groups of up to 25 players, and that number does not include coaches or referees or ups. The thing about leagues is that you've got a group of people that are sticking together for a period of time. So it's important to maintain contact information and team rosters. And that is to allow for contact tracing if an outbreak were to occur. To try to minimize the possibility of any kind of illness breaking out. If possible, try to hold your games with another team or with other teams every 2 weeks. we know that it can be up to 10 days, 10 to 14 days before symptoms might appear. So I think that's where that 2-week threshold comes in. Part of social distancing is not to share snacks or water and to discourage any personal equipment sharing. When it comes to spectators, families like myself do like to watch our kids play. So the state has done a great job of saying that for these youth sports, spectators are permitted, but all those social distancing requirements do apply. And it's strongly discouraged to have spectators at adult sports. Next, I'm going to reiterate the thing that comes up constantly. These webinars are a proactive approach for us to talk with you and for you to ask us any questions. Another part of what we do is we field inquiries of things where people are saying, I don't think people are following the public health order. And one of the biggest ones is, do I have to wear a face, does a face covering need to be worn while recreating? That's both indoors and outdoors. And emphatically, the answer is yes. I should have put mine on today, but I have one that goes just right around my neck. And I can pull it up and down. It's when you can't maintain that 6-foot distance. So when I talk to folks, what I hear most of all is, I'm confused because the state public health order recommends or when it's feasible. And this is what it gets back to, that Boulder County extended the public health order early last week. And the local public health order requires that face masks or face coverings are worn. That is for every person older than 12 in public. That's anywhere in Boulder County when you cannot maintain social distancing of 6 feet. And as Jesse shared, this order stays in place indefinitely. The most restrictive order does take precedence. It's possible that a local municipality could have a more restrictive order, and so it's important to understand that. I've also provided the link here to the media release, but Jesse pulled out some of the key talking points on there. What came out today was also something from Boulder County around, while the public health order locally does not require children under 12 years old to wear a face covering, it's encouraged and it's strongly recommended that parents work with their children to do that. That could apply to you for your youth sports, your youth camps, that kind of thing. So the more that there's consistency across the board, the more it's helpful for everybody to understand that. So that media release just came out today. I'm sure you'll see it in the paper as well. Next slide. So this one provides all of the links to the 8th amended public health order. It's pretty lengthy. It goes through all the different industries. What the state has done a good job on also is providing guidance that's a little bit more user friendly, and it's very specific to each of these sectors. So each of these links might apply to you, both personal and outdoor recreation. We've included the indoor and outdoor events because some of our facilities some of your facilities may be used for those activities. And if you have a retail function or a restaurant function as part of your recreational facility, like a golf course or such, you will have different guidances that apply to each of those areas and each of those activities. So I've also provided a link to the full guidance, which covers just about everything. And it's good. It also just talks about businesses overall with that social distancing and those requirements. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Next slide.
Oh, that's me.
Okay, back to you.
You sure? Okay.
Sure.
Just a reminder that we have these sessions each week. And you're more than welcome to join more than one session if you've got questions about a different sector. Definitely most businesses, and I would expect most recreation-based businesses, have some of these other sectors intermingling, and so it's really good to just know what other sectors are required to meet. If you have the interest, we partner with the Latino Chamber and the Boulder Chamber of Commerce to offer the Spanish language session at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays. And we'll be offering, we'll be just continuing to offer these sessions in the future. In some form or another, we want to be able to be available for you, and also to get our message out there as well. So with that, happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. So Jesse, while we're answering a question, you might want to bring up the space calculator.
Sure.
For us, because we'll go a little bit into that.
Okay.
Marnie, are there any updates to the guidelines regarding contact sports?
There really isn't. When you go into the personal recreation guidance, I think that's where it really covers that. And it's included in the 8th public health order as well, that it is discouraged to have contact sports. So it's encouraged to go with lower contact sports. And I think they specifically call out, actually soccer is part of that, and baseball. So no, there is not any new guidance on that. But the place where you want to look would be under personal recreation. And I also encourage you, honestly, to take a look at that complete guidance, because there is information. It's you have to have, the way I described this last week is you have to just think about this from the mind of how do we ensure that we are maintaining it's really physical distance between other people, and minimizing the possibility of being near somebody else. And those contact sports really doesn't allow that to happen.
Well, thank you. All right, and then someone mentioned that they're unable to attend some of the other seminars, so events or office or some of those, and if they could be put on the list for that information. And the answer is yes. All the previously recorded sessions are located on the Boulder Chamber YouTube channel, as well as Boulder County Public Health also gives the link to those previous sessions. And if you email me, and in this case I have your information, I will add you to the list for the updates on events or food service or any of the other sessions if you're unable to make the live sessions. So we've recorded, as well as opportunities to get the updates from those different sessions. So the question is, how is capacity determined? Is there a formula or guide of what capacity of a room is based on size? So we can't see it right now. You have to stop sharing this one, Jesse.
Yeah, well, I want to start by saying, and this is really, I want to rely on Marnie here. The way that the order is written, it just says 25% of capacity. Mm-hmm. It does not say that you need to use the social distancing calculator to calculate that. So the way that it was previously figured out was, what is your fire code capacity? 25% of that for that room. And your building record should have that, whatever facility management you have should have that fire code maximum for each room, and 25% of that. You can use, and we encourage the use of the social distancing calculator, and I will now share that.
And thank you for prefacing that. The social distancing calculator gives you an idea of if everybody has 144 square feet and can move around,
right?
What you may be able to do safely.
Yeah, so I'll click back for a second to just show where this comes from. So this is the covid19.colorado.gov website. Under Safer at Home on the left-hand side here, you can click on the social distancing calculator, and it takes you to this page. And this page just quickly explains what the social distancing calculator does. If you think about the 6-foot grid in a rigid sense, where everyone is standing still or everyone is moving together, like a military unit or something, then everyone could maintain 6 feet of distance and that would be fine. But the reality is that we don't all move at the same time. And so to really maintain 6 feet of distance, you need a 12-foot grid, or as Corinne mentioned, the 144 square feet around you. And so with the social distancing calculator, which is down here on the page, click on it, and it gives you, you enter 2 pieces of information about the room that you're in. What is the size of the room? And then what percentage of the room is covered in furniture or non-movable equipment or displays. And then that tells you in a 1,000 square foot room where a little over 10% of the floor is covered, that's 6 people. It's not a ton. But in some of the recreation centers and some of the gyms that we have, you know, you've got a 10,000 square foot space and you've got 6 people. So there you go. You go over your 50 people, except that it says 25% or 50 people. So 50 is your max in that case.
Mm-hmm. So this is just another tool for you to look at the safety and maximums. But again, the first is that 25% of your listed capacity or 50 within the room, whatever's smaller. But if you want to maintain more space between people, again, you max out the 50, but you can look at this distancing calculator as a way to say, okay, I'm trying to maximize the space between people. All right, so this is about face covering orders. This question's Boulder County requires a face mask if social distancing cannot be maintained. So if 6 foot distance can be maintained, are masks optional in that instance?
Well, they're certainly recommended, but yes, I think that the best way to describe it, and this comes up particularly in the outdoor setting, our trailheads are where, even if you can maintain the social distancing, Boulder County Parks and Open Space has instituted a requirement that you must wear masks at trailheads because of the likelihood of passing within that 6 foot, and there's more people there. A good example is when you are getting onto a trail and you've got a gate. And I've been a trailhead ambassador and seen just the congregating that can occur where people aren't realizing that it's a short period of time, but wearing a mask is what's required in those cases. Likewise, a lot of our front range trails that are in the plains are wider and can accommodate people to pass each other by kind of either stepping off trail and be further than 6 feet. So you don't have to have your face covering on. But in the instances when you get into some of our backcountry trails or some of our trails, certainly in the municipalities, you do find that you have to pass within close proximity. Have your mask, have your face covering, something that can go up and down. So the answer is that it is optional, meaning you can pull it down, but you really, I think what we're saying is when in doubt, bring it out, always carry it with you. And that goes indoors and outdoors. Indoors, I'd say the thing that comes up is, that really comes up, I think, is in the gyms when you've got equipment and perhaps you've got treadmills or what have you. The spacing of those treadmills really makes a difference. If they're right next to each other, you're not maintaining that social distance. If you're going to be on there and someone's right next to you, even 2 away might still not be, if they're right next to each other, might not be 6 feet. You really need to have your patrons be wearing masks in those instances or try to space those further out. 6 feet is the minimum, and that's where the social distancing calculator comes in. What the research and what the data is expressing is that as people recreate, the droplets can, the breathing becomes heavier, the droplets can go farther, more droplets are happening quicker, and so you want to space yourself out further. And that's where it all kind of stems from.
So I think this person was specifically asking about like dance classes or yoga classes, or, if they can maintain the 6 feet. Again, reminder, that, you know, as you said, as you exert yourself, you breathe heavier, and you may, 6 feet may not be enough, but this was more around that indoor. It was a question about the indoor space.
Yeah, as long as you can safely maintain that social distance and physical distance, really, of 6 feet, the face covering would not be required during that time.
One caveat to that, sorry, is if you're in a municipality that requires, there are a couple that require that you wear a mask at all times, even indoors, if you can maintain 6 feet. Like, even if you can maintain 6 feet of distance, you still need to wear a mask. But sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's great. I mean, and the other piece of it is that when you get your yoga mats all spaced out and you're all good during your session, things are fine. As soon as you're done with your session and you're all moving toward the same out space, you're not going to be able to maintain that distance. And unless you've got a plan in place, you're probably going to need your face covering. So it's just be thoughtful, be mindful of it. And that's why we've got that social distance, that risks, know your risks and work through that.
And especially if it's in a class-like setting and you have, even the instructors wearing a mask and gloves and walking around, they're now going within that 6 feet. And the mask is meant to protect others, not you, so that you're putting that instructor at risk as well. And so in some cases, that's the case. The contact sports person wrote back and said that they've heard of some Denver martial arts studios going full contact, and whether or not that's really allowed within the guidelines. So
the guidelines say that contact sports should be avoided. And if you were to apply all of the other restrictions, contact sports would become difficult enough to operate that in most situations, contact sports just wouldn't be practicable. But I think it's important to note that the current regulations say that, let's see, just trying to find the line here so I can read it out from the,
because I know in martial arts there's sparring, and then there's those other pieces of
right.
Self-defense and so forth.
The guidance just says consider participating in low or no contact sports instead of high contact sports.
So it's strongly discouraged, I think, is some of the stuff that we've seen in other instances, like for instance, spectators for adult recreational play, strongly discouraged. Not prohibited, but it goes back to assessing your risk. And I don't know if, Jesse, I don't recall you going through Outbreak stuff in today's webinar, but we have done that in several webinars, so you can look back at the other ones. What's important to note is that if your facility, if your fitness center experiences in its staff 2 people, that's considered an outbreak, and that requires a whole lot more bringing in, I'm not going to say the word right, epi.
Yeah, just bringing in
epidemiologists.
Thank you. And contact tracing and everything else. So it is about your risk, and we understand it's the livelihood, but we also, it's important to think through what happens if in those situations.
We want to think about safety. We've talked about in this session before that this is one of the last industries to open, recently, and this has been one of the last industries, just like bars. And last week bars closed down, so we don't want to see this industry go backwards because it's in that high risk category. So we definitely want to be as safe as possible. I think the person wrote in, they just want to do something or plan. They don't want to get in trouble with the county, but they also want to avoid risky situations. So it's always good to know when you hear what people are doing in other counties. We get this a lot. You hear other counties doing this or that, and you know, there are a lot of questions that come up, and the best way to, you know, to find out if you're going to be doing this is to ask your questions, to, you know, submit them via covidbiz@bouldercounty.org or any other way to make sure you're following the safest guidelines you can. And if it's an interpretation type situation, you guys can't give legal advice, but I've been sending out the last couple weeks a link to be able to apply to get free legal advice if you don't have a lawyer just, you know, sitting around waiting to give you legal advice on interpreting the public health orders. So that is now available to some small businesses if you need some legal advice. Are there any other questions out there? All right, I'm going to say that, and of course one's going to pop up. We want to thank everybody for attending. Again, we're going to continue to offer at least some sort of way for you to ask your questions, to get information as it changes, and to provide feedback when we need it. I want to thank Boulder County Public Health. Jesse and I were commenting this, I think this is our 84 of these webinars over the past quite a few weeks. And we've had hundreds of questions asked, lots of links, lots of resources, and we want to continue to offer those opportunities for our business community to do this safely. If you did ask to be put on another list, I will get you on that list and get you the information. But all of the webinar recordings from the last 84 hours are available on YouTube. If you want to listen to all of them, you can. You'll just hear a lot of me and a lot of Jesse. All right, we will see you next week. Have a great weekend, or weekend and weekend.
Thanks, Corinne. Thanks, Marty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.